got to me. She said we should hook up the boyfriend and boogie. Don't know me, they look on. I'm being the clouds. Pull full of Henny, I drink and I drown.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Sam from Harkey Fishing, and man, we're headed back from the lake, and we've been doing quite a bit of fishing here lately, and there's been some fronts moving through, and this overwhelming question keeps coming up in my brain: is wind your friend? You know, I've heard that since I started fishing, man. Wind's your friend. You need to have wind if you want those fish to bite and stuff. And so you know, I've done some research on this stuff, and through some experience and stuff about wind, I wanted to kind of go over with you guys why is wind your friend, or is it your friend at all? And you know, when I think about wind, I want to talk about the advantages kind of versus the disadvantages of wind. And I think first let's talk about the advantages, because we all want to be able to catch more fish when we go out, and it's so important to fish the conditions that you're facing. And you know, some days you go out, it's cloudy and rainy. Some days you go out, it's clear and sunny. And but one of the things that we encounter most of the time is it's either windy or not. And so when it's windy, when the wind's blowing, there's some natural occurring things that happen that make these fish you know, position themselves in certain areas. So what wind does, it does not blow fish into wind-blown banks, okay? If you ever hear that, and I have actually been told that by fishermen, is, hey, when the wind's blowing, it blows all those fish up against the bank. Well, if that's the case, man, just go up to the windiest shoreline you can find, and you'll just be able to pick up your limit of bass off the shore, because it'll have blown them up there. Yeah, that doesn't happen. And so why does it bring fish into wind-blown banks? Well, what wind does is it blows plankton, algae, some other nutrients into the wind-blown shoreline that bass don't feed on, but the bait fish feed on. So your shad and your shore minnows and a lot of the stuff that bass and crappie and heck, just fish in general like to eat are going to be in there feeding on that algae and plankton on those wind-blown banks. So they're right. Wind is your friend when it comes to that. Those fish are going to be up there eating. The second thing that I think wind does that is a big advantage to you as a fisherman is it's going to provide a little bit of noise when those waves are kind of hitting the shore, or they're the little white caps, if you want to call it. It doesn't have to be that strong a wind, but there's a ripple on the water. It creates a noise in the water. And you know, the best analogy I can give you this is you know, stalking a deer or something like that. If you're walking through the woods, you spot a deer, you're trying to put a stalk on this to get up close to it. If there is no wind and you step on a leaf or a twig or anything, there's a big pop, the deer looks right at you and off they go. If you've got a little wind to go with that, you know, it covers up some of that noise. So, you know, you may not realize how much noise your boat makes, especially your trolling motor. The sonar also does it. The sonar pings. If you don't believe this summer when it's nice and warm, you know, put your boat on spot lock and go for a swim, and you know, swim around your boat and listen to how noisy that trolling motor is in the water. And then don't leave it on spot lock, but swim under your sonar sometime and listen to that thing pinging. It'll hurt your ears. It's pretty wild. So those waves and the wind will create some noise that will disguise your trolling motor noise and the noise of your boat. The third thing wind will do is it basically helps camouflage your bait enough that it looks more realistic. That ripple on the water, those fish don't get as clear of a view of your bait, and so if there's imperfections in your bait, those fish are still going to go ahead and eat it because the wind's blowing. So, you know, wind is your friend in a lot of ways, but there's a couple times when wind's not your friend. And so the biggest thing I would point out to this is wind can be dangerous. I have been on the lake in some really, really nasty squall lines and different things that have come through, stuff that I probably should have been off the lake for. And I can tell you, wind can be very, very dangerous. Depending on the lake system you're on some of these bigger open lakes, you know, Grand Lake has been one of the roughest lakes I've ever fished on. And you guys, if there's any of you watching from up north in the Great Lakes, you're probably laughing because, you know, I fished in Grand Lake one day when we had 4-foot waves, and that to me was ridiculous. I know in the Great Lakes these guys see 10 and 12 foot waves, but it was pretty scary, to be honest with you. I had my kids with me, and I got really nervous about the deal. That was when I first started fishing. I had a much shorter boat, and you know, every boat handles wind a little bit differently, and all I can say is err on the side of caution when it comes to wind and safety. The other thing wind can do is it can be so strong that it makes boat control very, very challenging. There has been many a time when we fish these tournaments, and my partner has been the guy that had to catch the fish, because I have been struggling. Sometimes the boat is running plumb perpendicular to the bank, and I'm trying to keep it straight, and it's just really, really challenging, and it ends up mentally getting to you because you can't focus on fishing. You're just trying to keep this boat somewhere close to a fishable area and try to keep from blowing into the shoreline, and so that can be really frustrating when it comes to wind too. You know, so what is the ideal situation? I love a nice light wind, about a 5 mile an hour wind that puts a nice ripple on the water, a little bit of a breeze, and to me that's perfect. But you can fish in a variety of situations. When you have wind, one last thing, you know, what bait should you use? If you're fishing a wind-blown bank, there is a lot of options, and in general, what I've had the best luck with is fishing wind-blown pockets, just a small pocket that can kind of narrow those fish down, and I've had great luck with a spinnerbait and a swim bait. That's kind of my go-tos in wind. Keep in mind, it helps if it's windy. It's nice to be using something that's moving. So a crankbait, spinnerbait, swim bait, you know, something that you can actually keep reeling to keep the line tight. If you're trying to throw a shaky head or a jig or a slow-moving bait, they work. I mean, those fish are going to bite them. The deal with those are, though, you usually have such a bow in your line or a bend in your line, you can't keep your line tight to know that they bit it. And so I would encourage you to, you know, stick with something that you're cranking, be it a crankbait or a spinnerbait or swim bait. So, man, I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you hit like and subscribe to our channel. We appreciate it, man. The channel's growing like crazy, and we appreciate your help. If you got a topic or anything that you'd like us to cover, drop a comment down there. If you like what you're hearing, hit subscribe, hit the like button, and appreciate you watching. Keep your lines tight, and good luck out there fishing.